Well, welcome everyone to the RATPAC presentation on SotaMate. It's spelled funny, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is a presentation about a new way to use some of the digital modes like FT8, PSK31, RIDI, use them in a new way and hack them to do various things for SOTA and POTA activations. So to get started, how about a little bit about myself here? This is a trip that I did in Yosemite National Park. I'm Brian AB6D, and this was part of a 3-day backpacking trip that I did with KE6MT Rex, who you see in front of me there in the video. We were the first two amateur radio operators to activate Kuna Peak at 13,000 feet. And in the SOTA program, when you're a first activator for a mountain, you get your name associated with that mountain forever as the first activator. So there's fewer and fewer of these mountains that haven't been activated, and they tend to be the really hard ones to get to. So like I said, it took a 3-day backpacking trip to get there. What you're seeing is summiting Parker Peak, almost 13,000 feet, early in the morning, and then on our way to Koip Peak, which is about 13,000 feet. And then after we summited that one, we could eventually get to our target, which was Kuna Peak. And then we had to retrace our steps all in the same day before the sun went down. This is another trip I went on around Lake Tahoe. This is Tamarack Peak, really beautiful views that you get up here on some of the peaks. And I could go on, and we'll see some other demonstrations. But I've always loved the outdoors, and I love technology, and I love ham radio. And during COVID, I discovered both SOTA and POTA, summits on the air and parks on the air, which combine a bunch of my hobbies into this one amazing experience. So this talk's going to talk about how we can integrate all of these different ideas and technologies together to do something new. And I developed over a year during COVID a piece of software, a service that I call SOTAMATE. And the reason why it's spelled funny is because part of it started out as an SMS telephone number where you could send an automated system a message and it would do things for you. It would automate SOTA or POTA. And of course, the phone number is SOTAMATE, spelled that way because that was the only way I could get a phone number with those digits. There's no room for an E. All right, so let's start out by talking about what the heck is SOTA. For those of you who don't already know, many people already know POTA. It's very popular, so I'll breeze through that really quick. And then we'll get into what's new and what SOTAMATE does to help participants in both of these activities. And then at the very end, if we have some time, I've got a bonus round of something that hasn't been made public before, and I can give you a little sneak peek of something that's under development. So, Summits on the Air, what's it all about? If you think of SOTA, Outside magazines said it's like biathlon for geeks, and it's got a lot of great qualities. Certainly, it is an activity that is inclusive and has really something for people of all levels of ability. For those who want it, you certainly can get plenty of opportunities for exercise. You can make it a social event and go with groups. You can certainly find these amazing views. You can get surprises like this fox here. It can get you into all sorts of new toys and technologies and gear. You've got all the gear you got at home at your ham shack, and now you get to do it all over again and try and lightweight it the same way you would do in backpacking. The lighter and smaller something is, sometimes the more sophisticated or unfortunately, the more expensive it can sometimes be, but not always. And those of you who are really into emergency communications, this is seriously off-grid practice. When you practice at home and you forget some piece of equipment, you just go in and get it. But when you do SOTA or POTA, you really are off grid. So if you didn't do your planning, you're going to pay for it. And that gets you thinking about backups. And while the SOTA organization and POTA clearly state that they're not a competition, there are points and there is a leaderboard, and that allows you to set personal goals to compete with yourself and if you want with others. That can make it fun and make you motivated to keep going. And the way I like to think about it, this isn't just a 10,000, this mountain here, the foot-high mountain. This is really a 10,000-foot-high antenna mast. And you'll be amazed what range you can get off your $40 VHF handheld when you put it on top of a 10,000-foot mast. Plus, there's so much to learn, not just about radio, but about the natural world. This is Pinnacles National Park, one of the closest national parks to my house here. It's a really spectacular place. Now, points are based on in the SOTA program are based on the height of the peak, and it can be from 1 to 10 points. And some peaks have seasonal bonuses. So like Death Valley National Park has some peaks that in the summer, because they're excruciatingly hot and difficult and dangerous, there's bonus points for those in the summer. And then around Lake Tahoe, for example, where I am near, in the winter, because you got to snowshoe your way up these things, those have bonus points in the winter. But normally peaks are on a 1 to 10 point scale based on how high they are, and it's relative to which region you're in. There's the planet is divided up into associations and regions and so on. And the funny thing is, it's not a fair system. I've been in Tennessee in my sneakers in the winter and just walking along on nice dry ground, and been on gotten 13 points for a peak at about 4,000 feet. And then or 6,000 feet. And I've been in California on a 6,000-foot peak in the winter in snowshoes and gotten half as many points for the same height. So it's not always fair, but that kind of makes it fun and interesting that there's all these variations. So you feel like you're getting free points when you go to Tennessee. As far as, activations, like I said, there's something for everyone. If you don't have all the gear for single sideband and all you've got is a handy talkie, well, there's a lot of people doing FM. It's amazing how many people are doing CW. Compared to any other radio sport, you get really high participations in CW in SOTA. And that's because the gear is so much lighter and so much more range per watt of battery and equipment that you're carrying. So there's a real incentive to push your skills into things like CW that you don't see sometimes in other radio sports. It's worldwide. It's like I said, it's got associations and regions and summits. It's in this hierarchy of how everything is put together. We don't need to go into the details. But one part of it is you've got different roles. You've got the activators. They're the people who go out on the mountains and summit them. And they're the ones on radio who are in charge. They have the safety to deal with. They may have weather issues. I've had significant weather issues I'm dealing with on the summit. And your antenna's blowing over and rain's coming into your radio and stuff. And sometimes you have lightning danger. So they really set the pace. The activators kind of get to rule the airwaves, and what they say goes. And we mentioned that they get the points based on how high they are. Now, back home are the chasers. They're the ones in the shack who chase the activators. And they also get points and can get awards for their chasing. The amount of points that a chaser gets is based on the activator's peak. So the higher the activator is, the more incentive there is for the chasers to chase the more difficult peaks. So that works out really nice. And they have to follow the lead of those activators. You might be in the middle of doing contact and the activator will just stop and you don't know what's going on, but you take their lead because, again, there's some life safety issues in play. And talking about safety, if you're going to do this, if you're new to SOTA and you haven't done this kind of stuff, we don't have time to go into all the safety stuff, but learn the 10 essentials, go with somebody who knows what they're doing. I was a little nonchalant in the beginning, and you start doing hundreds of these peaks, and it's, you can get into trouble really, really quick. It only takes 1 or 2 mistakes, and it goes from a nice day to a real problem really quickly. So I have a much greater appreciation for planning and safety and education than I did when I started. And I recommend you do more reading than you think you need to get going. But one of the big problems is getting found. So you're on a peak now and it's cold and you want to get down. You want to make your 4 contacts that are required to get your points. How do those chasers know what band you're on and what frequency you're on, and how on earth are they going to find you? You could be up there and call CQ all afternoon, but if you really only have a few minutes before you got to get down, then it's all about spotting. And there's 2 things. There's a thing called an alert, which is before your trip, when you have internet access, you can go onto a website and register an alert, which is your plan to be somewhere at a specific time. That's an alert. Now, the problem with an alert is how can you possibly know how long it's going to take you to snowshoe up to the top of some peak or something? You don't. So it's just a plan, and chasers aren't going to sit around all afternoon waiting for you to arrive. So much better than an alert is a thing called a spot. And a spot is not a plan for the future. It's what's happening right now. It's an announcement of an activation that's in progress. And that spot can come from many different places. So that's SOTA. And we're going to spend most of the presentation talking about spotting and the difficulty of that. Let's do a quick introduction of Parks on the Air. POTA. Parks on the Air is very similar to SOTA with some key differences. So instead of being these peaks, these mountaintops, it's parks. So it could be a national park, it could be a state park, any number of things that the organization has selected. And there are online databases that tell you which ones qualify and so on. And unlike SOTA, you can do what we call 2-fers or 3-fers or 4-fers, where you could be in multiple parks at the same time. For example, the Appalachian Trail, which goes through several states, goes through various parks. The Appalachian Trail itself is a POTA park. And then there's some of the national parks and state parks that it goes through are parks. So if you locate yourself in the right place, you can be making points in a N-fer, a 2-fer, 3-fer, 4-fer kind of activation. So these two programs are really similar. They both have a hierarchy to them, and there are some differences. But what I like is to do it in pictures. You can kind of tell from a picture whether somebody's doing SOTA or POTA based on how comfortable they are. If you got beers out on the table and you got a cooler there and there's some good food around, you're probably doing POTA. If you got some amazing views, you could be either POTA or SOTA, but a lot of times some of the best views are in SOTA. And the equipment in SOTA tends to be a lot smaller and lighter and sometimes more expensive, but not always. All right. So back to that problem that we were talking about before. You've made it to the peak, the wind's picking up, sun's going down. How do chasers find you? You need to get spotted. And so there's a lot of different ways that are available to get spotted. The easiest way really is to use an app on your cell phone. If you have cell phone service, like here I am at Tahoe, this is Captain Pommon's Rock. And there's a bunch of towns around Lake Tahoe there. There's cell phone service, and you can use an app and you can get yourself spotted. And those chasers will get an alert on their phones and they will tune in to you and you can make your contacts. That's great. But you can imagine when you're in the parks or on some of these peaks, you can be in some pretty remote areas. So another way you can do it, if your cell phone internet service is spotty, sometimes cell phone SMS service is a lot more reliable than internet service. You're not fighting with your email trying to get those bits through that lousy, weak connection. SMS can usually punch through that better. So there are SMS gateways to get yourself spotted. You send a message to an automated system and it spots you. The third way is using APRS. So if you've got a handheld that can do APRS, you can send out a packet to a SOTA gateway and get yourself spotted. That has some problems. If you are on a big peak around a major city, or surrounded by cities, I've been on some peaks where I have so good visibility to all these different cities that there's never an open space in the APRS channel to send a packet. Most radios will not initiate a packet if they're receiving a carrier from some other radio sending a packet. And if you're on top of a mountain, there's always some other radio that you can hear that's sending a packet. I've waited over 20 minutes and I couldn't get a packet out on APRS because there was never a time when there wasn't a packet coming. I've had the opposite problem where I've been on top of a mountain, and if you're not near a city, there is no digipeater to hear you. And so you can't get spotted that way because, VHF is pretty much line of sight plus a little diffraction bonus, but it doesn't go very far. So that doesn't always work. Fourth way is to use a satellite device, kind of cheating in a little way, but it's allowed under the rules. And you can spot yourself by bouncing to some gateway. But you have to have a plan and the equipment and all that to do it, and it can be expensive. The fifth way is if you know Morse code, you can use CW and a thing called RBN whole. But this requires that you register an alert before your trip, telling a computer that you're going to be out there. And then the computer will listen to the RBN reception reports. And if it sees your call sign, it will automatically spot you. And that's a great way. In fact, it'll follow you. If you QSY and change frequencies, it will follow you around and respot you automatically. But if you don't know CW and you're a single sideband user, this does you no good. And if you forgot to register the alert ahead of time, RBN whole won't follow you, so it won't work. So it really requires planning ahead. And if your plans change, that can be a problem as well. Another way is JS8 call, not very popular for SOTA people because it requires so much equipment to do it. Usually to run JS8, you often need a full computer setup and batteries and so on and so forth. So you just don't find it used much in SOTA. POTA, much more, because POTA, you can bring your Jeep and your pickup truck, you can have a whole bunch of equipment with you, and it could be a fun way to spot yourself. So that gets us past the intro, and what the talk is really about is SotaMate, which is a new solution that I kind of completely accidentally fell into after trying everything else and having problems and getting busted activations where I do all the work to get to the mountaintop and couldn't get my APRS through and things like that. And part of it had to do with some bugs in other people's software that turned into features that allowed this whole thing to work. So, but before we get there and tell the story of it, let's talk about what it does. There's two completely different modes or set of services that SotaMate does. And people often only look at half of what it does, and they think that's all it is, and they don't look at the other half. There's what I call two-way commands and one-way commands. So some of the first things that were developed in SotaMate were these commands that you can send to SotaMate if you have cell phone service, SMS, email, or satellite. And that's where you can send the system a command and it'll spot you, or it'll register an alert for you. You can also tell you what other people are on mountains right now. So you can get, there's also award programs for what's called summit to summit or park to park, which is when you're on a summit and the person you're contacting is on a summit. And that's going to be really fun. Or you're in a park and they're in a park. So one of the things you can do with this service is find out who else is on a summit or in a park right now and what frequency you're on. And you can make these summit to summit or park to park contacts. You can also ask the system about call signs. So if you make a contact and you want to learn, like where is that person? Where do they live in the world? What time zone are they in? You can, or are they a big active POTA operator? You could find out how many points they have, and the system will give you information on call signs. It'll give you information on summits or parks, what the elevation is. And the most important for SOTA people is the weather. Weather is a big deal in the backcountry. Really big deal. And I spent a lot of time figuring out what a good weather service is that really understands mountains better than your average weather report. And I've paid for a premium weather service that's mountain aware, and I feed it data. This is a hyper localized weather report based on machine learning and altitudes and things like that. And you can give this system a park ID or a summit ID, and it will get a weather report very specific to that exact summit, which is really cool. All right, so that's half of what SotaMate does, but I've got the gold star on the right there. There's other services that do the things on the left. SotaMate's not unique in some of these it's unique, but it's not totally unique in what it does on the left. But where I think it really stands out is what it does on the right. And this is self-spotting or self-alerting or sending emergency messages or things like that when you have no other service except an HF radio. No cell service, no nothing. You can get what we call a one-way message out. You can send a message out, that command will get executed. There's no way to get a return back from it, but you can do stuff. So how does that one-way stuff work? Well, SotaMate integrates all these different technologies, and you probably know about FT8 and that it's a great digital mode for sending very short messages, very long distances at low power, exactly what we need for SOTA. Now, FT8 is not a conversational mode. It's not designed to send anything more than a basic call sign exchange. And there's certainly not enough room to send frequency information and park IDs or summit IDs or that kind of stuff. And to do FT8, normally you need a lot of equipment. You know, you need your signal link and your laptop and your power supplies and batteries and radios and all that stuff. Not practical at 13,000 feet summit elevation. But I started experimenting with this when a guy in my club, he's actually Ron Nicholson, his name, his autograph is inside the original Macintosh computer's case. If you open it up, you'll see all of the engineers who worked on the original Macintosh, and his is one of those names engraved inside the case. And the original Amiga, also same thing. His name is inside that case too. So you know, pretty cool guy. And he started experimenting with porting the FT8 code onto a cell phone instead of a computer. And it runs natively as an iOS app. And I started playing with it in my local club before it was released. And I was like, wow, this thing's really, really cool. I wonder if I could use that to spot myself, you know, use FT8 as a way to send a command. And I started experimenting with it, and it worked great for sending and receiving. In fact, I didn't even need a cable. I could just play the sound out of the phone's speaker right into the radio's microphone, and it was really reliable. It would really get picked up by all of these other monitoring stations out there called skimmers. So I started thinking about how we could use FT8 to self-spot, and we had all the puzzle pieces there. And I knew there were these hundreds of software-defined radios in the world monitoring the airwaves 24/7. And this is my home software-defined radio, SDR, which is listening to 4 bands at the same time. If you look at the top of the screen there, you could see I'm listening for FT8 on 4 bands and PSK on 4 bands. And it's decoding all of the signals from all of the people. You could see in the lower left there, all of the signals that it's decoding all in real time. So that's pretty cool. And I also knew about that all these skimmers, these monitoring stations, report their signal reports into PSK Reporter, a centralized database, and you can map out all these things. So I knew that we had this way to send messages. I knew there were these skimmers. I knew there was PSK Reporter aggregating it. And that's when I thought of this workflow. If I'm on the left there, I've got a radio that can send out FT8 or PSK31 or some message. Skimmers can pick it up, and they relay that signal report into PSK Reporter. And then if I could hook SotaMate up to that, I could find special messages in there and execute commands. And for example, spot myself. That was the big idea. Now, it shouldn't be possible for a variety of reasons. And it's only possible because of a bunch of kind of mistakes and lucky breaks. So, you know, let's see. Before we get into how it all works, let's see it in practice by an extreme operator who's a little inspirational, at least to me, Paul Maurer.
Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah, your screen went black. We don't see your desktop.
And it's meant to be black because I'm queuing up a video that's about to play when I hit the button. So we're about to hear, I'm queuing in Paul Maurer, VA6 MPM, and he goes into Canada's backcountry and does the inspections on warming huts as a volunteer.
Hello, my name is Paul Maurer, Victor Alpha 6, Mike Papa Mike. I am an active participant in the Summits on the Air program, activating here in the Canadian Rockies near my home in Alberta, Canada. One of the major problems we have in activating in the Canadian Rockies is that many of our summits are in very remote areas. In fact, most of our summits are in areas where there is no possibility of cell phone reception. There's no possibility of APRS digipeater reception, and therefore no possibility to self-spot if you happen to be a single sideband operator like myself. Of course, there's the reverse beacon network for CW operators, and there are satellite phones, but both of these also have limitations. It's long been a problem for SOTA operators to have a reliable method to self-spot, especially those of us who operate using single sideband. It's also true that in most regions of the world, the most attractive summits are those in the most remote locations, sometimes requiring several days' journey just to reach the base of the mountain. It goes without saying that the more remote the SOTA summit is, the bigger desire we all have to be successful in the activation. Some of my most disappointing activations have been to those areas that are the most remote, and I failed to make the required contacts largely because I was not able to self-spot. In addition, being in these remote locations has often put me alone at a lot of personal risk in the event of any mishap like a slip or a fall, bears or other wildlife, bad weather, or health issues. Any number of potential problems could be happening. SotaMate for me has been the greatest source of relief I've had for my remote activations. Not only as a means to self-spot, but also it allows me to send out pre-programmed distress messages via email or even text messages. And this is all done over HF, so the system is actually more reliable in most of the situations that I've encountered. Following is a short video of an activation I did recently in a very remote corner of Jasper National Park. This particular summit had not been climbed since the first descent in 1893. So as you can imagine, I wanted to maximize my possibility of a successful activation, while at the same time minimizing the amount of gear I had to haul into the backcountry. As you will see from the video, SotaMate for me has been the perfect solution. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play an FT8 signal into the microphone of the KX2. And it will come out of this.
So right there, he selected his peak ID in the app and the frequency he wants to operate on. And now he's transmitting audio from his cell phone into the microphone of his radio on the FT8 frequency. That sent out a command, and now he's getting spotted.
Whiskey 6, November Charlie, 423. Thanks for the contact today, Elliot. Thanks for the summit to Summit 73. Okay, bye-bye.
So that's another day at the office for a SOTA operator. Really fun to do that kind of thing. And you're on the way down, you feel a real sense of accomplishment when you got all that equipment up there and you got those contacts in the book. So let's talk about how it all works. While the ideas seem really simple, and you know how the story ends, that it's possible and that it works. It really works because of these lucky bugs and the discovery of some secret APIs, one sentence in the FCC rules that allows it to be legal, and a bunch of key people who really had some special knowledge to make it all work. So the original idea was to use FT8 to send a message to myself, so AB6D, from AB6D to AB6D, and then on the 2 to put a suffix on my call sign, and that suffix, known as an indicator, would encode the information for the command that my computer would then decode and execute. And it worked. I could send this message in the iPhone app that my friend wrote at my local club, and it would show up in PSK Reporter, and I could have my computer pull it out and make it all work. And I thought that was great. And so then when I actually started doing this as a real project so that others could do it, I started learning about FT8 at a much deeper level than previously, and was reading all of the specification documents from Joe Taylor, the Nobel laureate who wrote the thing. And I started to learn that, wait a minute, this isn't really working the way I thought it was. You see, FT8 is designed to send as little data as possible to make a contact. And Joe Taylor in his document explains that 28 bits are needed to encode a call sign in a CQ message. And that if you want to send a suffix, it takes 58 bits. Well, if you go into it, standard CQ messages are only encoded with 28 bits. So there's not enough room for a suffix in a CQ message. And then when I talked to the PSK reporter guy, he told me that the most popular skimmers out there, WSJTX, will not report every message that's received. They only report to the central server CQ messages, call signs found in CQ messages. So standard FT8 messages only have 28 bits available. I need 58, and there's no room to do it. So it's impossible. But I told you that I had already experimented with it, and it was working. So here I have a specification for a protocol that says that it can't work, and yet my code was working. So what the heck is going on? Well, it turns out a more recent feature of FT8 is that it can allocate the full 58 bits to encode a suffix, but that doesn't work in a CQ message. It works in another kind of message. So again, it's not going to get reported to the central server, but I was getting it in the central server. What's going on? I'm so confused now. All right. So I started looking at the database and did a lot of testing, and I found out that there's this special mode, which I knew about, which is a free text mode. Okay, so in FT8, you can always do a 13-character text field where you could type any alphanumeric message you want, but that is a free text message. It is not encoded as call signs. It's just a bunch of letters as far as FT8 is concerned. So the decoding software isn't going to decode it. You may see it as a call sign or a call sign with the suffix, but the software doesn't see it that way because it's not in a call sign bit field that's being parsed as part of a schema. So again, it can't possibly work, but it was. So when I started going through my database and looking at all these messages that were working, what I realized was it was only working if the skimmer software was Spark SDR and no other software. In other words, there's a special bug or feature in how Spark SDR works that enabled all this to work. What was happening, every other piece of software out there decodes the FT8 messages using this schema. And it looks for call signs in these bit fields of where call signs are supposed to be. But the way Spark SDR works is it doesn't do its own decoding. It makes an API call to WSJTX, and it has other software decode the message. It takes that decoded message as a text string, and then it parses out the call signs itself. So it's not using the schema. It's doing late call sign extraction. And because of that, what was happening is my messages that I was sending were actually, they look like they're a normal FT8 message. But what's really happening is since it's not valid because of that suffix, this is getting encoded as a free text message, as a type 0.0, which is a 71-bit message. And that was the key. This software worked differently from every other skimmer. All right, that's the first miracle that happened. And I started playing with this thing, this late parsing. And, you know, so we have these 13 characters. How much data can we get through? Well, when I started learning how Spark SDR works, it would only work if there was a preamble. There has to be some message and then a space before the call sign. Otherwise, it will not extract the call sign and the suffix. So here you see the letter S, that stands for SotaMate. That's a required position. The space is a required position. We only have 13 total characters. Call signs can be normally up to 6 characters long. We need a slash to put our suffix on, and then that leaves only 4 characters. So we can send a command, but it has to fit into 4 characters. So what can we do with that? Well, there's another problem. If I send that message with a suffix, PSK Reporter has an API that allows my computer to get reception reports. The problem is it doesn't work with a wildcard. You can't tell PSK Reporter, give me all the reception reports that happened for my call sign, no matter what the suffix is. Just send them all to me. It doesn't accept wildcards. You have to know ahead of time what message you think has been sent. And then if you query on that message, yes, it will send to you back if it got it or not. But that doesn't help us. We need to be able to receive all messages and look them up in a table, right? So I was very lucky. I reached out to Philip Gladstone, the inventor of PSK Reporter, and he liked the idea of the project so much that he gave me access to a special API that has a direct feed from his database that receives sometimes 400 reception reports per second around the world. So I have a server that is getting every reception report from every radio, every scammer of every message that anybody's sending worldwide on all bands. And that's really fun to have that data. And one of the things that the system does is SotaMate is filtering through all that stuff and looking for these special SotaMate messages. So it does work. But there was another problem, and we keep going. So how much can we encode? Well, if we have a 4-character suffix, you've got 26 letters, 10 numbers, that's 36. That gives you about 1.6, but you can also use a space, so you can space index it. So you end up with about 1.7 million possible combinations, which is about 20 bits of data. But then Rex, KE6MT, pointed out that what I was doing was illegal, because you can't just use any old suffix you want. If you wanted to use like /4 to be the 4th command in some list of commands to execute, you know, /4 means you're operating in Tennessee. It's a locator. And if you look at the FCC rules that say that you can't do that. But the FCC rules do say that any amateur station may include one or more indicators, such as field day, that are self-assigned, and that's key. It's that sentence that allows what I'm doing to be legal. But the red section says, yes, you can do the green, but you can't do the red, which is you cannot conflict with a locator if you're going to make your own indicator. So then I was a little bit heartbroken, because when I started to research what the heck actually counted as being a locator, it's very poorly defined. And I spent 3 months of research reading lots and lots of legal documents to figure out what the difference between a locator, such as Germany or Tennessee or something like that, and an indicator, such as field day. Well, here's some links if you want to do the research on your own. It's the most boring thing you could do with your evening, but it's all out there for you. And it's actually, even after a lot of research, it's not clear, but I've come up with, there's a couple of rules that are a little bit ambiguous. So it takes a little bit of interpretation, but after a lot of work, I came up and wrote a bunch of software to develop a list of suffixes that should be legal, that are definitely not locators. They're not valid locators, and therefore they can be indicators. But then we've got this other problem that we don't want the system to use a suffix that says something like help or crap, right? So I had to remove from the system all of these bad words or English words that might have meaning to them, because we're really just trying to encode a command. So when all is said and done, I had 1.7 million combinations. I had to remove all the valid locators, remove all these bad words and swear words and English words, and that left me about 1 million combinations, or about 20 bits of data after I did all that. All right, so what else can we get? Well, we've got this 20 bits of data. We could also get a few extra bits if we get really sneaky in how we do our FT8, and I'm not going to talk about some of these tricks. But if you really get fancy, you can get up to about 26 bits of data in that suffix and in how you send the FT8. So what do we need? If we can get 26 bits, what do we need? Well, we need 47 bits, and we only have 26 bits. So again, I got very depressed after doing a lot of work, because it seemed like this whole system wasn't going to work. Because if you look how many SOTASUMMITs and POTA parks there are, there's a lot of them. You need a lot of bits to encode them all. And then if you think of all the different modes that somebody might use, FM, CW, single sideband, digital, whatever, there's all these modes. You've got all these bands and all these frequencies that you might want to use on each band. You need about 47 bits to encode it. And I only can encode 26 bits. So, bummer. Well, the solution was to have each individual user predefine a custom configuration of their own 1 million combination that only applies to them. So while there are indeed worldwide 155,000 SOTASUMMITs, I'm probably not going to be in Ecuador doing, Cotopaxi this year. And I really don't need that to be one of my possible commands to send out, right? I only need to be able to indicate which peak I'm on peaks that I'm likely to activate this year. So about once a year, I make my plans and I go into the website and I build a custom configuration to myself. And every SotaMate user builds their own custom configuration, which defines their 1 million suffix combinations and what those commands mean. So here what I've said is I'm going to operate in the Northern California range, in the Tahoe, Lake Tahoe area of Nevada, and so on. And these are the regions that are around me. Now, each one of these regions, like this region here, has about 500 summits in it. So I don't have to list each individual summit that I'm going to activate. I just have to pick the regions that contain those summits. And then I do the same thing with POTA locations. So I generally am going to activate parks and national parks and stuff that are either in Nevada or California this year. That's my plan for the year. So I put those into my POTA locations. And then I define my frequencies and modes. So I like to operate in single sideband on 40 meters, 20 meters, 15 and 10. And then I channelize that thing. So I say I want to base a left-hand side. The lowest frequency I'm going to operate on 40 meters is 7.178 megahertz. And then I want 120 possible steps. When I'm in the field, I want to have options. So if somebody's using this frequency, I need some other options. So I have a 1 kilohertz step size, kind of channelizes the band. Of course, your audio is 3 kilohertz, but this gives me a precision to the band of 1 kilohertz steps, and I have 120 steps to choose from. So that pretty much is the general area of the 40-meter band, right? And I do the same channelization with all the other ones. Even with my handy talkie, there's the national calling frequency, 146520 on FM for a handy talkie. And I have 4 steps, and they're at 15 kilohertz steps, which in Northern California is kind of the simplex step size for the simplex standard channels, okay? So I've channelized all this. I put this configuration into the system right there, and I have some other things that I can do here. I can define some pre-canned messages. So I could send my wife a message saying, I'm safe, I made it to the peak, or I'm in trouble, send help. And I can have that sent either to an email address or to a telephone number, and have these pre-canned messages. And when I'm in the field, I can select one of these pre-canned messages and have it be sent. Okay. So when you put it all together, you get a configuration up top here. These are my SOTA regions. And you can see each of it, like the Northern Sierra region has 429 summits in it. And you can see how many summits are in each region. Here's my POTA location. So California has 368 parks that are in it. And then you see all of my frequency steps that I've defined. And when you put that all together, what you do is you add up your summits and parks, and you multiply times the number of frequency steps, and that comes up with the total possible combinations. So in other words, if I'm on a specific summit, let's say Whiskey 6 Sierra Nevada 001, and I'm on the national calling frequency on FM, it's picking one of these combinations, and that's the message that it's going to send to the server. And the server would spot me according to that peak on that mode with that frequency at that time. And that's how it works. So here's the app. When you're in the field, this is what Paul Maurer in that video, what he was doing. He had this app. On the left, we have SOTA. On the right is POTA. It's the same app. And if you're in SOTA, you would pick your region, your summit. It gives you information. There it is, Kuna Peak, 13,000 feet. It's only been activated by 2 people ever. It's a 10-pointer. Here's the band I was selecting. So the 20-meter band, and I selected a specific frequency within that band. And the software generated this message. This is my FT8 free text message with a 4-character suffix after my call sign. And then what I do is when I'm ready, I hit the play button and I put the speaker up to the radio's microphone when I'm on the FT8 frequency, and it sends this green message. And the skimmers pick it up. They decode all this information from that 4 characters, and they go execute it. And the same thing happens with POTA. So, whoops, I forgot that. Yeah, so there's what we were doing. So how does this actually get encoded? Well, if you think of, I put those regions into the system. So if you think of region, Northern Sierra region, region A, it might have 4 summits in it, right? And then if I had all my other regions, they just line up on a number line here. And you could see the number line on the bottom. And here's my POTA location. So let's say POTA location California had 3 parks in it. and POTA location Nevada if it had 2 parks in it, and you number all these from 0 to N, and N being 14 in this hypothetical example. Then on the vertical axis, we have all of those frequencies that I selected. Remember, I said I wanted the national calling frequency on FM, and I had some single sideband frequency steps. So I have all of my frequencies and modes on the vertical axis, and I have on the horizontal axis all my summits and parks. And so if I'm in a particular park, like say this one right here, at a particular frequency and mode, it's a row and column relationship. And that's how it figures out which command number is the one that I'm going to execute. And then on top of this whole list, you put those special pre-canned messages on the top. So this is how the whole thing gets encoded. And it's specific to every specific ham radio operator. So KE6MT's table is going to have different parks and regions and frequencies than 86VT or N1CLC. Everyone has their own configuration. So at the beginning of the year, before you ever use SotaMate, you have to build your configuration at home on a desktop computer on the website. You define your configuration once for yourself for how you want to operate. You throw that into the server now. You load that configuration into your cell phone, and now the server knows your configuration. Your cell phone knows the configuration, and you can go offline. You don't need any internet access at this point as long as the server and your cell phone are in agreement on what that configuration is. And when you send that message and you're in the field and you have no internet access, you don't need it. So again, if I'm on this summit on that frequency, that turns into a number, and that number comes into some lookup table. But remember that we have bad words or swear words or locators that we're not allowed to use. So we have another table that is a spread table that removes the illegal sections of that numeric table and gets rid of them. And then that is what gets converted into text, which are the 4-character suffixes. And then when I'm in the field and I send that my call sign with WXYZ is the suffix, when that gets transmitted, then the skimmers pick it up. They get those messages and they come into a database, and the database inverts the process. So it looks up that call sign. Remember, this configuration is different for each call sign. And so it looks up that particular person's configuration in the database, and then it decodes and reverses this whole process to figure out what summit they're on and what frequency. And then it executes the spot command or the alert command or the message command, whatever it is that the person did. Now, to really blow your mind, this is a lot more complicated in real life in the back-end coding, because the list of summits and the list of parks that exist in the world is changing. They're not static. So you may take your configuration from the server, load it into your cell phone a year ago. You may be out in the field with last year's configuration, and the POTA organization might have added a park into this table. So the table's constantly changing. And so my service not only remembers what your configuration was, but it remembers when you pulled the configuration and knows what the state of the universe was on that time, how many parks were in that region or that location at that point in time. And so it's having to calibrate for all that stuff for each individual user. So how do you use it? Well, again, here you've got your radio. Here I am on 14227, which is going to be my single sideband where I'd like to operate, my operating frequency. And so then I want to bring out my cell phone app. And this is an old video from a long time ago. The user interface is a lot more modern and easier to use and better. In this case, I'm trying to send a SMS message. I'm sorry. But what you would normally do is you'd use the AB switch on your radio, and you would use AB to switch between the FT8 send frequency and then AB switch back over to your operating frequency. You could skip back and forth. And so here I'm listening to all the other stations that are sending. And when they stop sending, I know it's the time for me to start sending my message. So I hit the push to talk button. You can see that SotaMate message there, STM, my call sign and the suffix, that's encoding the command that was computed. And if you look at the display here, you've got this thing called ALC, the automatic level control. And this is really important if you've never done FT8 before. If you're new to FT8, You need to understand this so that you don't create splatter and interfere with other people who are trying to operate on that same band as you. You want to transmit with as much power as possible, the best signal to noise ratio, while not overdriving the amplifier into its nonlinear range. And the way you do that is by going right up to where ALC is about to kick in, but doesn't kick in. Because when ALC kicks in, you have nonlinear amplification, and that creates splatter, and that interferes with other operators, which is bad. So on the Elecraft radio, 4 bars of ALC means no ALC. It means you're approaching ALC, but you haven't engaged it until you get to the 5th bar. On a Yaesu radio, 0 bars means 0 ALC, and 1 bar means you're doing ALC. So each radio is a little bit different about how you read ALC, but you need to understand your radio for that. So that's what I'm doing there. And then I'm transmitting that FT8 message. And you can see I'm varying the distance between the speaker and the microphone to keep it at about 4 bars. So when it goes too high, I move the phone away a little bit. And when it gets too low, I move it a little bit closer to the thing. I'm also trying to make the signal to noise ratio good relative to the birds and the wind and all that stuff. So I have my speaker on a high enough volume, and I'm getting it close enough. And so I ran the command and I got a text message back. So I sent myself a text message by sending an FT8 thing. So that's just the sample there. So that's how you get the signal to noise ratio right. You want a strong audio signal coming out of the phone without overdriving. And that's the trick there. And then if you go to the website when you're back home after your trip is over, you probably are very curious to see, well, how well did I get heard? How many monitoring stations were able to receive my message? Is this reliable reception out there? If only one person heard the message, that's not very reliable. The other thing is I recommend that you send each message at least 3 times. The software will automatically send 4 times unless you cancel it. But if you send just once, you can get QSB or other things like that. And so it's not reliable. But if you send it 3 or 4 times, it almost always gets through, especially in North America or in Europe. If you're in Asia, it's a little bit spottier in there because there aren't as many skimmers on the right frequencies. So if you come onto the website when you're home after your trip and you click on the activity button, you can see all of your reception reports here. So the time and so on. So this is the bottom of the screen. And at the top of the screen, I'm not showing it right now. It shows just your personal information when you're logged in, just your call sign. And it'll show how many receivers heard your message. At the bottom of the screen, I show everyone else's. Everything that you transmit through SotaMate, because of the FCC rules say that you're not allowed to send a message with the intention of obscuring the meaning of the message. Well, these are encoded. So how do we not have the intention of obscuring? Well, one way is to not obscure it by posting the decoded message. So that's what this is. These are all the decoded messages from everyone who used the service. So there's no intention of obscurity. We're actually showing it. But I only show on the main page here what the command was that was executed. What I'm not showing, I only show privately to each user is how many skimmers heard you. So you get additional statistics on your own messages, but you get to see the message of everyone's messages. All right, so little pause here. Let's take that all in. We're going to shift gears. That's pretty much the bulk of what I wanted to show you. I told you at the beginning that there were 2 completely separate sets of functionality to SotaMate. One set of functionality was the stuff that's these one-way messages that you send over FT8. You can run a command and it can't reply, right? It's just skimmers that are monitoring, receiving, and executing these commands. There's no way for them to send back to you. But separately from that, there's a whole nother set of commands that SotaMate has. When you do have internet access or SMS or email or a satellite like a Garmin InReach device. And that's what I'm going to show you just some quick samples here is I'm on my phone with internet access, and I'm going to send a text message to SotaMate, 768-2628, right? And so here, let's see what I can do. So I can bring up my thing here. I send to SotaMate, and I'm going to just say hi. And the system's going to come back, and it's going to tell me what the commands are that are possible. And so I'm going to say, oh, well, tell me what spots are happening right now, because I might want to do a summit to summit. And I want to know who else is on a summit right now. So I said, give me the spots, and it comes back and it tells me what it's 1925 Zulu. And here's other people who are on the summit and what frequency they're on and what peak they're on and how many points there are. And then I could say, well, you know, I only want the single sideband because I don't know CW. So don't give me all those CW spots that are happening. Just give me the most recent 3 single sideband spots. And I'm on, let's say I'm on a Garmin InReach where I get charged per byte on a satellite device. I want a short version of that. So that's what the short meant. How about I want to see what upcoming alerts are happening, like maybe not who's on a summit right now, but who might be on a summit in the next hour. So I could say, give me all the alerts that were registered, and it'll give me those, and so on and so forth. So I could do the same thing with POTA, and I could say, hey, you know, who's activating a park right now, and give it to me in a shorter form, and it'll come back with that. You can do the same thing with weather reports. You could type in somebody's call sign. You can type in a park ID. You could type in a summit ID and get information on it. And if you have an account and you're registered, one of the coolest things is that you can associate, you can on your profile on the website, you can associate your cell phone's telephone number with your call sign. And when you associate your cell phone telephone number with your call sign, a lot of things become automatic, because just you sending a message to SotaMate, it knows who you are now. It knows what your call sign is. So if you tell the system to spot myself, I don't have to type in my call sign. And it'll remember things. So if I say, hey, I'm on the Mount Davidson in San Francisco, so that's Whiskey 6 stroke November Charlie 423. If I spot myself there, after that point in time, it will remember what peak I'm on today. And for 24 hours, if I spot myself again, I don't have to tell it what my call sign is. I don't have to tell it what peak I'm on. It remembers. All I have to do is tell it what frequency I want to QSY to, what I want to shift frequencies or bands. I just QSY, and it'll automatically figure out the mode from the frequency. It'll figure out my summit. It'll figure out my call sign. So all that stuff's automatic. So that's basically the end. You don't have to do all the humongous peaks and stuff I did. There's a lot of these peaks which are considered somewhat drive up. You can get beautiful views out there. It's just a great activity that gets you in the great outdoors. So I highly recommend it. Bring a friend with you for safety, and go activate some summits. And with that, I'm going to give you a quick bonus round, and then we'll do some Q&A. So that's everything I showed you is stuff that's been around for a year and a half, 2 years now. But some of the brand new stuff that's just out for a couple months is some partnerships with some other people. So KI6SYD has this new QRP radio, this little portable thing that has no screen, no knobs, no dials, no nothing. And the way it works is you use your cell phone, and it's a Wi-Fi hotspot, and you connect to this radio via Wi-Fi on your cell phone, and its user interface is all done on a web page. So you go to this web page, radio.local, and it will connect to this radio here, and you can control it. So that's pretty cool. And he's got these little kits and stuff. So you can reach out to him. He has a website. But one of the buttons that he has in here, that little push pin button, is a special little button. If you click on that, what will happen is it will go launch the SotaMate app on the phone, and you can control, the SotaMate can control this radio, and this radio will directly synthesize FT8 tones right in the radio itself. So there's none of that playing a speaker into a microphone and trying to get the audio there. This will directly synthesize the FSK FT8 signals directly from the commands that SotaMate gives it. So now you can self-spot yourself right from there. So, you know, here's his radio on the right. You've got your phone, and the web page and SotaMate have this direct connection to each other, and it's bi-directional. So you can be in SotaMate and find an operating frequency, and it'll tell the radio to tune to that frequency. Or if you use the web page to tune to a frequency, SotaMate will get the event that you've changed that frequency, and it'll automatically figure out how to spot you on that frequency. And so here's his website, KI6SYD. You should go check him out. He's done a bunch of other projects. This is his third generation of this device, and it's really cool. And then let's see if I've got a here's showing you a little video of the integration where you click on that button and now you're in SotaMate, and notice that it picked up the frequency that you were operating on. Here's a newer version of SotaMate where you can use the GPS and automatically find out what your summit ID is. You can click on the send to radio, and that will launch the radio, and the radio now will shift to the FT8 frequency, send the message, and then automatically shift back to the operating frequency. So it's bidirectional. You change something in one. So let's say I'm in SotaMate and I change the frequency. Now the radio will change the frequency to that frequency, and vice versa. If I change the frequency here, and I go over to SotaMate, it'll automatically load that frequency into SotaMate. And so it's ready to spot you on that frequency. So that's pretty cool. But this radio is a little hard to get to right now. You can't buy it as a complete radio. It's kind of a kit and a board. And I think a bunch of people have to ask for them. And then he buys the parts kind of in a group. So you put yourself on a list, and he does group part purchases and so on. So I've been working with Max a little bit, and we figured some things out about the Elecraft radios. And I've been talking to Wayne about this and some fun stuff. But one of the things we found is that if you take the CW tone that the Elecraft radios, the KX2 and the KX3 can make, you can tell the radio through a command and through a cat port, your computer serial port there. You can send a command to the radio and tell the radio to turn on the CW tone. And when you do that, you can then tell the radio to vary its VFO frequency and change frequencies, and that CW tone will stay on. Well, what if you did that really, really, really fast, like every 160 milliseconds? That would be effectively making FSK, frequency shift keying. And that's what FT8 uses. So we did a bunch of experimentation. Max did some, I did a bunch more, and perfected into this little prototype. This is my prototype number one. I've built 3 of these so far. They're getting smaller and better. They're not ready to share quite yet. The software is a little rough. But effectively now, you could take your cell phone, that little yellow thing that's not very big is a Wi-Fi hotspot. And on your cell phone, you connect to that Wi-Fi hotspot, the same thing that I showed you earlier. And now SotaMate can control the radio, and you can self-spot without any audio whatsoever. You just tell it, hey, spot me, and it will go to the FT8 frequency, send out the message, and then return back to your operating frequency all automatically. And it's a really clean signal because it's sending out a pure tone. It's not, there's no audio, no birds or wind or something like that getting mixed into the signal path. So it's really clean, and you get good signal noise ratio. So with that, that was the presentation, and now it's Q&A.
Be nice if I unmuted myself. That was good. It was fast and furious. And if you don't mind, send me your PDF or your slideshow after we're done here, and I'll get it out so folks can maybe go along at a different speed and make some sense of it. And no, he did a great job. Before I pick up Gene, let's go over to Barry. Barry, what we got in chat?
Question on do POTA spots connect directly to the POTA website?
Yeah, they do. I use the POTA API. They have an undocumented API. I reverse engineered it, and then I reached out to the the founder of POTA and with their head IT guy, and we worked on some stuff. They have a new API that's coming out that everyone's going to have to shift to. But yeah, I called right into the same servers and put the messages right into their system the way that, their own software does. So it hooks right in. And the same thing's true with SOTA. I use in this what's called SOTA API 2 and SOTAWatch on their servers and inject the messages right in. Probably one of the most interesting things is how the Garmin InReach works, because Garmin doesn't if you go to their website, they don't officially support virtual phone numbers. They only support physical phones that are real phones. Well, my computer is not a, physical phone. It's a virtual phone number. And they sometimes their service blocks those kinds of numbers or is incompatible. So I came up with a system where people can email from their Garmin InReach the SotaMate command, but Garmin doesn't allow email on the reverse direction from a person to the satellite device because they'd get spammed to death with that very precious satellite bandwidth. So I reverse engineered the Garmin's internal APIs that they use in their own systems and needed help from some members in the military who do a lot of travel because those APIs change based on what country you're in. And then I needed enough examples to decode what the pattern was. So thanks to the amateur radio guys who are in the military who do a lot of travel, they helped us out and we decoded that. And now SotaMate, when you ask for a weather report or something like that, it injects the return message right into the Garmin's back end, and you get the messages directly on those devices. So yeah, I use all the APIs from POTA, SOTA, Garmin, you name it. QRZ, use their APIs. Media Blue, which is the weather service I use, direct into their APIs, many APIs.
Okay.
Are there any SOTA states in the United States that do not have any SOTA designation?
I didn't hear that very well. Could you say that again? So,
are there any states in the United States that do not have any SOTA peaks?
yes, there are states that do not have SOTA peaks. One that comes to mind is Florida. I can bring up a nice utility that is very useful for, I think the tallest mountain in Florida is Space Mountain at Disney, which is not a real mountain, of course. And, but yes, there's a couple states. But if you wanted to find that out here, let me share my screen again. And let's go look at SOTLIS. So I got to log in here. Let's do that. So if you go onto this website, sotl.as, you can see a map of the SOTA atlas of all of the different SOTA peaks that are available. So if we go down to Florida, you can see there are no dots, no colored dots. There are no SOTA peaks in that state. In fact, like you look at Mississippi, you only got one. So if you're in a flat state, Kansas doesn't have any, and so on. So you really need to be in one of these areas. But this is a worldwide program. They're all over the place. And the color tells you how high, how many points. The redder it is, the more difficult, the higher it is, the more points it is. And if you zoom way in, the numbers inside the circles tells you how many times that thing has been activated. So if we go to San Francisco, one of the most activated peaks in the world, Mount Davidson has been activated 661 times. If I zoom out and go over to, let's see, I don't know, one of these things in Lake Tahoe, some of these have been done, 23 times. I've done that mountain. Where's a harder one here? Let's see, Monument, where Hawkins. Yeah, I've done this peak. And there's a couple, if I could find Yosemite, it'd take me a while to find it at all these dots. There's Kuna Peak, which has only been done by 2 people. So let's see if I can. Oh, there's Mount Gibbs. Yeah, so here's where I was. There it is. If I go to Kuna Peak, that was the one I showed you the video at the beginning. You could see that AB6D and KE6MT are the only 2 people who've done it, and we're the first activators ever to do that peak. Other questions?
Eric?
Everything from the chat, so.
Okay. Gene, do you want to come on?
Yes. First of all, great presentation. I like how it can be as simple as complex as the operator wants it to be. I really like that. I like the fact that you added in the to consider a lot of factors in planning, from weather, gear, health, everything. Now, when it comes to the equipment, specifically batteries, how does elevation affect the batteries for your radio systems? The higher you go, do they decrease in efficiency, or vice versa, or what?
I have not noticed anything with the altitude being the problem. It's more temperature. So usually at the higher altitudes, the colder the temperature is going to be. So certainly you can lose quite a bit of oomph out of batteries that are cold. And different battery chemistries have a different response to cold than others. You know, a lot of the radios that you will find in SOTA are going to be lithium polymer or lithium iron, so LiFePO4 types. You know, you'll see a lot of bioNOs and things like that. The Elecraft radios, you know, are lithium ion, but they or lithium polymers and so on. But you know, the higher end gear, I've found that one set of like an Elecraft internal battery on a KX2, I can do at least 4 activations on one set of batteries, even in pretty cold temperatures. If it gets really, really cold, I might only get half as much capacity. I could do 2 activations, 2 mountains. So sometimes when I go to the backcountry, I'll bring an extra backup. But at the same time, if I'm in the backcountry for a multi-day trip, I really am trying to shake out every ounce that I can. So it's sometimes I'll use batteries that are multi-purpose, that I can charge my cell phone or charge my headlamp or charge my radio or whatever. But even that equipment can add weight. So it's always a trade-off.
Right. Now, when it comes to the external batteries, whether it be LiPo or something else, are there, or is there a benefit to using some type of soft insulated case around the battery to help, well, basically a thermos effect, keep warmth in, cold out? You know what I'm saying?
I don't have a lot of experience. I mean, certainly, you know, the dangers of some of these batteries, if they get damaged or punctured, they can start fires and stuff like that. So there's the safety aspect of it. But we put the safety aside for a second, trying to keep them warm. You know, a lot of times I will put them in the sleeping bag and keep them warm with me. You can put them in your jacket and throw them in the radio at the last minute. So absolutely that, you know, you bring the temperature up on those batteries, you can get a lot more capacity out of them. But at the same time, I'm operating SOTA much more than POTA. POTA people often are doing QRO. They're doing, you know, higher power, 25 watts, 50 watts, 100-watt radios that they're hauling out there. When I do SOTA, you know, I'm doing 10 watts, 5 watts. My power requirements are a lot less. And the best SOTA people are doing CW. You know, they're on 5 watts, and CW is so power efficient that even a couple of small lipos will last and last and last, you know, multiple activations, you know, hours of operation. So, and some of the better SOTA radios, like a KX2, for example, have very, very low quiescent current drain. When you're not, you know, when you're in receive mode, just sitting there, they just sip on the power. So even with the cold, it generally is, that's not my problem. I have a lot of other problems in the field, but the batteries haven't been my problem for SOTA.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for the information. And again, great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we're getting lots of very favorable comments here too in chat. They loved your presentation. Barry, what do you got in chat?
We are all up to date in chat right now. Just a lot of commenting on cold weather for cell phones and for radios, and how cold weather really it's not good for radios.
Yeah, that is definitely, I've had a lot of, I don't trust cell phones in the backcountry or on peaks and stuff like that. I like to have, you know, 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none, all that kind of thinking. Like if your life depends on a map or knowing where you are, or if you get off the trail or lost, you know, depending on your cell phone is not a really good way in the backcountry. They get cold. The batteries run down really fast if you don't put them in airplane mode, because they're trying to reach that cell phone tower at maximum power, and there's no cell phone tower there to connect to. And they're easily dropped. You know, things are wet in the backcountry. It's just not really cell phone friendly in a lot of ways. So I always have backups, multiple sometimes, multiple backups for anything that's really important.
You know, a topo map and a compass comes in pretty handy too.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to know how to use it. A lot of people think they know how to use a compass, and then you put them out there in some place where every direction looks kind of the same. And then what? So it's, again, like most things, you got to practice it at home. And just like emergency communications, that's one of the beautiful things about SOTA and POTA is that, you know, you're out there practicing emergency communications without the emergency all the time. And so you get better at it.
Certainly, certainly. In my younger days of yesteryear, I did a lot of backpacking and that kind of stuff, and hauled around walkie-talkies and that kind of stuff. And you're bringing back memories to me here. Lots of challenges. Okay, anybody else got any questions?
We're good in chat.
Okay, well, looking really good on the time. This has really been a great presentation. Please send me your slides if you would, and we'll get this stuff out there and go from there.
All right, sounds good.
Oh,
Thanks, everyone.
One
Have a
other
good evening.
thing, one other
Yep.
thing to be sure that everybody knows is just because you can't go up to a summit or go up to a park, you could always be a chaser from wherever you're located.
Great point.
And it's a lot of fun.
That's a great point. And if you are somewhat mobile, there are a number of summits that are what we call drive-ups, where you can get nearly to the summit. You're not allowed to operate from a vehicle. You need to make the final approach, and there's no minimum number of feet. It just says that the final approach must be on, not aided by a vehicle or motor vehicle or something like that, or powered by a motor vehicle. But your final, 2 feet can be just falling out of your truck, and you can operate in a lot of these places.
All right. Okay, one last call here. Any questions out there, comments?
Thank you all for coming. This was a fascinating presentation.
It is, it is. Okay, well, thanks once again. Appreciate it. We'll get this thing out there, and really, like I said, really appreciate your time and your presentation. It was done very well, very professionally. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome, and enjoy, and I hope to see you on the air. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night. 73.
73.